I'm
You
just
just
making sure.
mentioned this part of the show that I had totally made myself create a separate like list in my notes form. So every time I think of something or like an article comes up that I want to use in that banter / one more thing section, I have it.
Awesome, man.
And now I actually have something to talk about. So I feel good about that.
I do this all the time where I say write the thing down, and I did and not write the thing that I was going to write down, and I forgot it for a brief second, but now I just remembered it. So I am going to put that in there too. Hang on. Let's see here. What I was going to say.
Let's just see how it comes out of the.
Okay, yeah, there we go. Yeah. What's going on, man? Like, we just talked. You and I have like a brief show meeting before we even go on with the pre-show. How are you doing?
Pretty good, man. I really can't complain. It's been a interesting week for sure. Yeah, just kind of motoring stuff along, hanging out. How's everything been going on your side of the fence?
Good. Yeah, no, good. Things are chugging along over here. This is a pre-show, so I'll be happy to say it up front. We got some new talent behind the scenes here. I'll kind of announce that a little bit later. I think we'll announce it next week. I mean, it was just yesterday that we kind of came to an agreement for a volunteer position, but I do want to bring that up. If you are a student, if you are somebody who is in industry who wants to get involved with the podcast, we don't pay you anything because we can't. We literally put all the money that we get back into the show. It kind of helps support the show and all that stuff. Helps us go to conferences eventually someday. I don't know. But if you're interested in helping out the show, if you have a passion for human factors and media production, whether that's podcasting or anything like that, let us know. Like, reach out to us. We can certainly work with you to figure out some arrangement that might be able to, have you help out with the show, like we just did with this other person. And I'm super excited about it because there's some cool things that, there's a lot of things on our to-do list.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my God, Blake, the list is so big. It's so big.
The biggest list of to-dos that Nick and I have ever had.
Yeah. I mean, look, like every good, I'm not saying we're a good YouTube channel. I'm not saying that, but every good production has a list of ideas, and we certainly do in multiple ways too. We have, the Human Factors minutes for our Patreons. We have a list of ideas for improvements and stuff, and yeah, it's a lot to consider.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a whole lot going on behind the scenes just to kind of make a bunch of the different things function and come up with new content to put out. And I mean, you've put a lot of effort into the new pod page website, all that kind of good stuff. So there's only more to come, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, there's tons of fun things to come. And I guess you'll just have to stay tuned to see. Let's see here. So this is the pre-show. Oh wait, this is not office hours. What is going on? There we go. Just on the pre-show.
There we go.
Hey, you know what? I'm kind of daydreaming over here, Blake. I wanted to show you this. Would you like to see what it would look like if we got 2 more patrons at the Human Factors engineer level to allow us to do Restream?
That's right. I logged on to Patreon earlier to grab the story, and I couldn't believe we had 11 people even. That was blowing my mind.
Yeah.
But what would it look like if we had 13?
Well, yeah, if we had 13, let me pull it up here. So this is just a mock-up, everyone. This is not the real deal yet. I know it looks real,
but it's not.
But it's not yet. Let's see here. So what this looks
Future
like.
Concept.
Yeah, a proof of concept, if you will. Hang on, this is kind of fun to show. So this is based on last week's episode, but and it doesn't, like, look, here's the thing. It doesn't really look all that different from what we're doing now, but I think it looks a little cleaner. Now, hang on. Let me just get this up and ready to go. Okay, there you go. So this is what it would look like if we got those 2 extra patrons. There you go. Look how beautiful that is.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Oh, wait, hang on.
Massively
and it's taking up half the screen here. So look, this is actually what it would look like. There we go. Yeah, that's it. Not with our faces down here. Don't worry about us. We'd
And
go
that
away.
was the pre-show on top of the human factors news. But yeah, that's sick.
Yeah, that goes away, and my name would not be there. Hang on. Now I gotta feel like I gotta do all. Anyway, that Restream logo would not be up there. You have all that stuff there, and then hang on for a second, Blake, and I'll go away.
Just to give you a feel. I like
what it would look like.
What do you call it? Logo in the right-hand corner. That's cute.
Oh yeah, super cute. Thanks, man.
Nice stuff. Very cool.
Yeah. So I mean, it does. Like I said, it doesn't look much different, but it will feel better, and like I said, we'll be able to reach more platforms, and we'll be able to do more stuff, like with the whatchamacallit, where you play the videos, like these things.
So cool.
Yeah, those things. Yeah, be very cool. So yeah. Anyway, that's what's going on. I meant to tell you, Blake, that there's a I didn't tell you this, and let me know how you feel about it live on the show. We've added. We'll talk about this on the show too, but we've added 2 additional levels of patrons. Now we have a $50 level called "I Really Like the Show," and
yeah, you must really like it if you're like pledging $50. That's insane.
A month, yeah. I mean, you know what? We don't know until anyway.
Although there's no additional benefits, that that makes sense. There's no additional benefits.
There's no additional benefits for it. It's just if you want, if $20 is like $20, we get you drinks. You still get that at 50, but it's just if you can help out the show, and you don't know until you ask. So that's what we did. And then this is a little different and something I've been what's the word I'm looking for? It's like morally contemplating. We have a $300 per month tier. And what this would do is this would allow anyone to write up 150 words for us to read on every show. This could be whatever you want, 150 words. This could be Nick and Blake sucks, 50 times or whatever, 10 times to make it Nick and Blake sucks. It's 4 words, 150 divided by 4. Anyway,
who we should contact for that is the guy that did our nice little design that you have on the merch store with that wonderful review that we got. Probably my favorite one we've ever gotten.
That guy. Yeah, if he really wants to throw down $300 a month, we can totally do that. But the reason this exists, and I feel like I owe an explanation here, is because we're kind of labeling it as the show sponsor. Now we're only doing one of these, so only one person can be at this tier. And what that buys you, again, is 150 words for us to read on the show. And that's about 1 minute of audio. And that would probably take place of the Patreon commercial every week. But the thing with that is, it's a way to support the show. If you're working at like a human factors company, if your whole company is human factors, that's a great way to advertise that you're hiring. We would read that script every day or every show for the month that you've pledged that. And we would keep doing that. So I compare that to something like ZipRecruiter, where that's like they start at $250, right? So we're asking $50 more, but you have a super hyper targeted audience of like people who are just coming out of school, early to mid-career professionals. We know our audience. And so I feel like that's a pretty good deal. And that means that we can do more interesting, fun things like go to conferences. Anyway, it's an option out there if you're listening and think that your company could support the show in that way. It might be a good way to reach some folks that, if you're really hiring or anything like that, or hell, if you're selling something to human factors professionals, that might be another way to reach out to. But again, it's kind of a show sponsor. It's still through Patreon. We're not making back alley deals here. The terms are clear. You write 150 words, we write it on the show. And
it's competitive. It's only one person a month or one company a month or whatever.
So that means we'll never have more than 1 minute of a show sponsor on a show. Like that's kind of the compromise that I've made. And I hope you're okay with that, Blake.
I mean, this is totally your ball game here, so I'm down. It's fine. I mean, because it's just like that's pretty. I mean, that's a pretty high price. I won't lie, but if it meets somebody's needs, or we can get, help to somebody or get somebody a job because they heard about this particular company. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. In some ways, it does provide a service to the community, although it's definitely a service to us as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I came at it, right? Where it's like, yes, that is a pretty high price point, but at the same time, that's what it's worth it, to me as the producer of this show, to do away with it's technically an ad, if you will.
Yeah, it's our own ad.
It is, but like,
since Amazon Audible didn't work out so well.
You like books.
Like books.
Anyway, that exists. We'll talk about it on the show just briefly.
Cool.
But that's kind of the purpose behind it is if you work at a company that wants to target human factors practitioners, or if you're looking for UX people and you're a company like that, it's more towards that. If you if you personally want to throw down $300 to say, like, I'm the coolest person in the world, not me, but you paying for it, and let everybody know that you're hiring or that you're available for work, that's another way to, like,
available for being awesome on a daily basis.
Like, you plug your own consulting gig. I don't care, man. Like, it's well, you're a sponsor of the show at that point. So do whatever you want with that. So let's work on the show notes. That's something that we need to do before we do a show. I see you chugging away here at the blurb. Looks like that's done. You're just pulling in some things.
Good to go. Yeah, I just left some extra additional notes for you and I, but nothing too crazy.
Cool, man.
This is not what I thought it was in terms of a story, so this is going to be kind of fun to talk about. I had a completely different expectation based off the title, and what's in my mind. So it should be cool.
I should probably refresh my memory. This is like 3 weeks old at this point. It just kept going and going and going on the Patreon poll. So somebody wanted to see it. A couple people wanted to see it, obviously, if it was picked this week.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I need to refresh myself on the story before we go live. We got about 20 minutes, so I'm good there. Now, I thought, let's see here. I thought we could talk about the human factors of cybersecurity a little bit. Is that kind of what you pulled in there, Blake, or is that
this is more of the how cybersecurity is going to affect smart farms and how little has been thought about. So it's a bit different than cybersecurity as a whole.
Yeah, I got some good bullet points here for the human factors bit. I'm gonna post those just below what you posted in the show notes.
Excellent.
And whoops, just throw them there. I should have done Shift V. I'm gonna do that real quick. Shift V. There we go. Yeah, I think those are good, right?
Beautiful.
Yeah, so we got usability, accessibility, skills, solutions, problem space, and then customization. Yeah, I think there's enough there. Maybe
good.
I don't know. Look through that real quick. See if there's see if you can pull some stuff out in terms of.
Sure. I'm just tweaking some of my stuff for the last part of the show.
Yeah.
All right, and then I'll pop back in and grab that. Okay, cool.
Let's see. Oh yeah.
All right, that's easy to do. All right, let's look at the human factors of.
I'm gonna even throw some more in there. I'm on a roll here. I'm just gonna throw some more.
Human factors 5. It's amazing.
Yeah. So this is a mess that I'm gonna clean up a little bit. But I think these are good points. So I'm gonna keep them. Yeah, I'm gonna keep these points, and we can talk about them. And then I have to refresh my memory on this article because, again, it's been a while.
Yeah, for sure. Do you mind if I've got one highlighted that I'm not sure how we can pull stuff from. Do you mind if I cut it?
Cut whatever you need.
Okay.
This is a collaborative joint effort to make the show better.
Yeah, it's more about like jobs and cyber than anything.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll just
yeah, this will be interesting because like the whole antithesis of the article is basically like there's a lot of research done on cybersecurity, so the assumption is, oh, just apply that to this domain and things should work. So it's ironic because it's a typical human factors problem, right? Where people just apply knowledge that worked in one space to a brand new one without kind of thinking about the extra needs or extra kind of like contextual factors.
That's always funny to me.
Funny one.
Yeah. That'll be interesting that we can maybe pull some compare contrast stuff.
All right, no more notes. I'll link to the original article. No, I won't. I'll just get the name.
All right, so I think we got some good stuff here. I think we'll have quite a bit to talk about. Again, I gotta refresh my brain on this. You know what? While I'm refreshing my brain, why don't you take a look through the no patron questions this week, but
no patrons. Oh man, those are my favorite ones.
Where it came from stuff, and why don't you pick some this week? Because I feel like I've been picking them every week.
Can do.
And that's fine. I'm fine with picking them.
Yeah, usually I'm having to write the blurb, and I've kind of gotten away from doing that because I wrote it, funny enough, in the wrong show notes file before we started. But yep, I can take a look and see if I can figure out some nice ones.
Yeah, let me just refresh my memory here on this article. Their article about farming and smart farms and the cybersecurity aspect of all them smart farms.
Yeah, when I thought of smart farm, I was thinking something completely different. Like,
what were you thinking?
I had a hacking farm in mind. And so I was wondering how in the world are they going to talk about cybersecurity for like a hack farm? But that's just what I thought every time I saw that article. I didn't think literally smart farms in terms of agriculture.
Yeah. I was getting really jazzed about this when I remember getting through this in office hours. I was like, oh man, this is so cool.
Ooh, this is a juice, father. Oh man. Okay, we're doing this one.
Read it. What is it?
Mentioning difficult clients during interviews. I love that so much. Now their perspective is going to be interesting.
Agriculture 4.0. Smart ag. Is that what it's called?
Yep, good old smart ag.
Smart ag. Stop being a smart ag.
All right, we'll do a little blue around it. Yeah, we'll do that. Imposter syndrome. We did one on a negative project? No, we did a horrible boss or something like that.
Horrible bosses.
PM. Like the film.
Yeah. Hey, never mind. Pass.
In the field, what we say is most important.
Here.
Ooh, so we do have a human factors sub one that's hanging out in here. We've answered it in some capacity before, but I feel like it would make good content regardless. And since it's from human factors, I am going to highlight it.
What's the Q? What's the Q?
So entering the HF field. So basically, how do I do it? What's the best? What's something you look for in that first job?
Okay, so we're talking about solar incidental lamps. Oh man. Oh, this is so cool. I'm geeking out about this again. I'm so excited. Existing security practice. Yeah, dude. This is such a cool article.
Let's see. We talked about this briefly at one point as an option, and I'm trying to remember if you wanted to talk about this. So how do you handle a user interview when your interviewee talks too much?
I don't know if we should take that one.
All right, we'll nix it then. I'm not worried about it.
Okay, I've refreshed my brain on the article. I'm gonna look through some of the more recent ones because I think the ones in the show notes, they're like weeks old, which is fine. If they provide good answers to questions. I want to grab potentially some of the newer ones though. So maybe if you find any in there, bounce it off me, and I'll bounce some of these off of you. There's a post in the Human Factors sub from a Human Factors cast about a 2021 HFES International Symposium on Healthcare and Human Factors. It's a coverage roundup. I think that could potentially be useful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to say, the ones we have left it came from Reddit. I feel like one of the questions we're going to answer this week is redundant with another option that's in here. Negative PM sounds very much like what we tackled previously. So if you see anything.
Yeah. Really quick, Blake, before we start the show, I am, my computer's chugging. And
I saw you go pixelated over there.
Yeah. And I think I just need to restart my browser. So
do it.
You okay to just sit for a couple minutes, maybe look through the IT channel on our Slack for more ideas.
Absolutely.
But I will be right back.
All right, get out of here. Refresh that browser.
Are you logged in?
I used whatever link you gave me. I don't know if I'm actually logged in.
Do you see the setup on the top right there?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, I probably shouldn't leave then. Might kick us out. So, okay, I'll just stay on. Hopefully there's not going to be any issues. I think what I can do is like kill a couple things and we'll hope that works. Yeah, we'll be okay. Okay, so I'm looking through the other stuff. Let's see here. We got how much prep time do you usually have before a portfolio presentation? Do you always get a breakdown of the interview schedule and timing?
That's interesting. I really that one's kind of hard because it's going to depend on the company.
Yeah, well,
and sometimes I hate giving those answers.
Yeah. I kind of want to answer this at the same time I don't. Is a high prestige school worth it, or should I choose a lower ranked affordable option?
Go for it. That's fine.
I don't want to talk about it. I kind of do, but I kind of don't. I really don't. I don't want to talk about it. No, the answer.
I totally got stuff to say.
I do too. I just don't want to talk about it.
Oh man. Yeah, mine would probably get me canceled and fired. So it's probably better not to go that route.
Oh, this is an interesting one. I feel like you'd have something to say on this one. This is Human Factors Master's Questions. Hi, everyone. I was recently accepted into a Human Factors Master's program that will begin this fall due to my undergrad being in kinesiology and the majority of my experience being in healthcare. Naturally, I'm drawn to this sector of human factors. So my questions are, how does choosing a specific sector work? Are the curriculums of human factors programs typically broad enough to give you the tools you need for at least most of the major industries? How easy is it to transition between industry sectors? Does anyone know about human factors and surgical robotics? Are there any couples that are both human factors engineers? I feel like you got a couple answers there, Blake.
Yeah, I got a lot of answers. Okay, we can do that. That's fun.
You want to do that one?
Yeah. Because I feel like we do have resources for that in terms of like company names to throw out for some of that stuff, and Elise and I, all that kind of good stuff. And it's kind of fun because I do a completely different thing than Elise does. I mean, I do a completely different thing than I think most human factors people do. So that'll be good to give a little bit of breadth of what you can do or where you can go, and this path can take you.
Yeah, let's do that one. Okay, so we got 3 then, yeah? We got
3.
Mentioning difficult clients during interviews. You got which one?
entering the field of HF.
Oh yeah. Okay. Let's bring that image up so we don't have to jump. And I'll post this one here and put the bold black background around it. I think that's a great idea, Blake.
I would have never been able to find it otherwise. So let's do this. Okay, cool.
Yeah, there you go.
Beautiful. Excellent.
Is that 3-point?
I have no idea. I want to say
what have you done?
I don't know. I just like making stuff bold.
Yeah. So this is the pre-show. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I didn't say skip ahead, but we're going to go live here in a couple. I guess we're live already. We're going to start the episode here in a couple minutes. I'll mention this on the show actually proper, but this is a quick plug for our healthcare symposium coverage. We have all that out and available for you now to consume. We have several interviews. Rebecca Butler, who is at MedStar Health, and Murteed Alfred talking about being an embedded researcher in healthcare. And then we also had the healthcare design competition winners on the show to kind of talk about their experience and what their design comprised of. It was really good interviews all around, as well as our preview and recap episodes. Elise and I went to the conference this year. It was a ton of fun. And so that's available now for you. There's a recap in the on our website if you look under news. So yeah, it's a quick plug. I'm not going to be here next week. I'll be here in the pre-show if you want to hang out with me there. But I will be traveling to for the first time in like over a year. I don't remember the last time I traveled. And this is kind of my banter, so I'm not going to spoil too much of it. But when was the last time you traveled, Blake?
So that's kind of a loose definition of travel. So I go to the Bay fairly often. Like, I don't know, the last time I went was probably January. Okay. So it's not that far, but also that's not like a big trip in any stretch of the imagination. I mean, it's a short-ish like drive.
8 hours.
Yeah. So that's probably the most recent thing that I've done. But in terms of like going anywhere kind of outside of California, I don't know. It's probably been a year, 2 years.
Yeah. I'm trying to think when the last time I was out of California for, and I think it was like, because it was weird because, I didn't travel for HFES in 2019 because that was when my son was born. And then I think the last time I had traveled was like a couple months before that for work. And so it's been like, I guess almost 2 years since I've been out of California.
I'm wondering if the last time that I traveled was when I went to Ireland. That is a long time ago now that you've got me thinking about it. Whew.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. Anyway, yeah, I won't be here next week. We're going to look for a guest to sub in for me. And then I guess the week after, we're going to be totally off air as like a little, yeah, is that right, Blake? We're totally off air. Okay. Totally. Yeah. We're going to take a little summer hiatus, cause we both got stuff going on. So that'll be a fun week.
It will be awesome.
Recharge our batteries. Okay, so we are just a couple minutes from being live. If you're watching us live, thank you. Appreciate you joining us. If you have questions or comments about anything that we are talking on the show, please feel free to write them in chat. We'll bring them up as appropriate. I think, if you have comments about the story we're talking about, bring them up then. We do have a section for questions as well. So if you're watching and have questions, you can jump in then. And we will answer them. Otherwise, we'll get to them in the post show. And with that, why don't we take a quick break? Yeah?
Yeah. Countdown timer. Let's go.
Yeah. Why don't we just, oh, wait, shoot. I need to get up my recording. Look at that. Always happens. Every single week.
That's not true. You did it last week and you actually called me on it.
You got yours ready?
No, I don't.
Okay. Shoot. Both of us. All right.
Hello.
Actually, you called me on it this week, so that's okay.
No, you did that all on your own. All right, I'm good.
Okay. Let me get the recording going. We're going to take a quick break. Jump ahead a minute if you're watching on a rerun VOD. I don't know. jump ahead anyway. Okay. As soon as I start the countdown here, Blake, go ahead and record. All right. We'll be right back, and we'll start the show. If I can figure out what button to press. There we go. All right. We'll be right back. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Human Factors Cast. This is episode 204, and we're recording this live on April 29th, 2021. I'm your host, Nick Roome. I'm joined across the internet from me is Mr. Blake Arnsdorff.
How's it going, Nick? How's everything going for you this evening?
Aside from the awkward intro, I'm good, man. How are you?
I am stellar. I just realized it's actually my dog's birthday, so...
Oh, happy birthday to your dog. I don't know
Absolutely.
if you care about the name, but I will not say it on the show. Anyway, we have a quick couple programming notes here. If you're listening to this, you probably see in your feed, there's a couple extra episodes for you. We have a couple extra interviews out there for you. We are continuing our coverage of the HFES Healthcare Symposium. We have the interview with Murteed Alfred and our digital health student design competition winners. Those are both out now, and we've posted a recap on our blog of everything that we've done. I think there's 5 separate episodes that we've covered, Elise and I, during the HCS 2021 symposium. It was a great time. Come check out that if you haven't already. Lots of good stuff in there, especially if you're into healthcare human factors. But we know why you're here. Actually, one quick programming note. Next week, I am going to be only on the pre-show. Blake is going to take it away with somebody else. We're finding a replacement. And then the week after that, we're going to be on a quick summer hiatus. And then we'll be back the week after that. I know I need specific dates. So maybe we talk about those next week. I don't know. This is on the fly. That's not in the show notes. But I'm not going to be here next week. Blake's going to handle it.
We'll be gone the week of the 13th, and we'll be back on the week of the 20th of May.
Thank you, Blake. All right. So with that, let's get into Human Factors news. That's right. This is the part of the show all about Human Factors news. This could be anything. As long as it relates to the field of human factors, it's fair game for us to sit here and talk about. Blake, what do we got up this week?
Up this week, Nick, we've got cybersecurity and how it affects smart farms. So some have dubbed this era of smart agriculture, with farms around the world scaling up their use of things like the Internet of Things, big data, cloud computing, and even AI to increase yields and sustainability of farms. Yet with so much digital technology, natural also comes a heightened potential cybersecurity set of vulnerabilities. There's no scaling back at smart agriculture either now that we've turned it on. So by the end of the decade, we will need to produce that extra food as we start crossing the world's population of nearly 8.5 billion people. And unless smart agriculture can dramatically increase the global food system's efficiency, the prospect of doing something like reducing global hunger is going to be very, very difficult. So Agriculture 4.0, or Smart Ag, aims not just at growing more food, but also doing so at an increased efficiency with more powerful data analytics and more intelligent automation and decision-making behind the scenes. Although smart agriculture has been extensively studied, the security issues around smart agriculture have really not been. Research has mostly focused on involved applying conventional cybersecurity wisdom, things we know today in large tech systems, to agricultural tech. And agricultural cybersecurity, by contrast, just doesn't get as much attention. So, Nick, this is a kind of an interesting take on cybersecurity because we've talked about that a lot in the past and its implications to both people that work in the security field as well as those that work in tech, focused on the human factors aspects. But now we're kind of applying it to a completely different world where, from my perspective at least, I don't think about the amount of technology involved in a farm, much less a smart farm.
Yeah, so let's just recap what this article here says. So basically, the problem statement is that there are technologies being implemented in smart farms, and the same care and attention to detail when it comes to cybersecurity aspects of those technologies are not being paid much attention to in terms of smart farms. And so the whole thesis of this article is that because we're not taking this care and attention into the devices that you have on smart farms, they are then hackable. And I thought what would be kind of a good idea is if we back up, let's remind ourselves of some of the human factors principles as it pertains to cybersecurity, and talk about sort of what the vulnerabilities are of these smart farms, and how maybe they can be solved by implementing some of these some of these human factors principles. And of course, it's going to, I hate myself for this, it's going to depend on the on the technology, and it's not just a one size fit all. Like you and I were talking about this in the pre-show, right? You can't just take one set of cybersecurity principles and slap it onto another thing and have it be good. It has to be tailored for it. And so I guess, I don't know, where do you want to start, Blake? We have a ton of notes in here that we can pull from. Where do you want to start?
So that's the biggest one, right? I think that's a mistake that a lot of us make when we think about cybersecurity, and it's a problem I think a lot of human factors professionals also kind of run into, whether it's from the design aspect or you're trying to design like a space or you're doing a risk analysis, whatever it may be. A lot of people will try and retrofit, pre-existing practices or a design that already exists to do a completely different task. And in some ways that's happening here. So you're just taking existing knowledge that's applied largely to very high-tech fields when we talk about cybersecurity, and try and say like, oh, okay, we can use the same mitigation strategies and we only have to worry about the same types of issues with smart farms too, right? But the problem becomes is there's specific kind of contextual factors that make the problem set that I guess these smart farms really face different from, a high-tech company. So not kind of looking at the, I guess, contextual things and the additional problems that come up kind of allow for this hacking problem to be even worse for something like a smart farm. And I think the biggest part that kind of like ties it back to the article too is this is one of those problem sets where you can't go really backwards and just start turning technology off and go do the research like in a vacuum, because now it's a necessity to have smart farms in existence to kind of scale up and continue adding technology to them so we can feed more people, do more things like that. So that's a really big issue there. One other kind of thing to consider is, what do you do to kind of train people to deal with cybersecurity issues in farming? I mean, you're introducing a lot of different types of technology, a lot of different constraints that maybe the farm technicians didn't have to deal with before. So I think that's another big one too, in terms of when we think about human factors. So taking your existing knowledge base and trying to grow it in terms of what you already know and how you understand a problem, and then what happens when you start introducing new technology and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I do want to talk about the problem space, because it's a little hard to conceptualize, because even you, Blake, thought when you thought smart farms, you thought of something else entirely. So I want to
absolutely
talk about this problem space, and just give a couple examples of how agriculture might be shaped by these technologies and how they can be hacked, right? So let's start there. We're talking about smart agriculture, or smart ag as they call it. And so there's a bunch of different security issues that you might actually run into, right? There's all the Internet of Things issues that you might run into with any other Internet of Things thing, especially the technologies that come into that, right? So there are certain different ways in which these devices communicate with each other. One of them being like, like Zigbee technology, which is kind of like this, it's almost like Bluetooth, but it just communicates through these wireless signals that bypass Wi-Fi. And so it's actually device to device communicating with each other. And the reason I know this is a long story, but the that's less of an issue than some of the human factors aspects, and we'll get to those in a minute. But there are certainly human factors issues with Internet of Things. If you have these smart listening devices that control things, we've talked about this on the show where people have been hacking them with lasers. With, you know, if you keep them in the wrong space, somebody can shine a laser onto it and communicate with it that way. There's also, you know, how do you voice protect something if you have these voice controlled devices? So there's ways in which the Internet of Things can be shifty. Let's talk about some of the other stuff. You know, there's one of the people in this paper say that one of the most pressing security issues with smart agriculture is the physical environment. So things like a factory control system, you know, being intruded, or UAV false positioning. Now, what does that mean? Hold on. So
yeah,
imagine somebody hacks into your control system. They can do weird things with your farm. They can waste your resources if you're a competitor. They can, if it's an unmanned aerial vehicle and they're able to hack into your system with a bad password that you've set, like farmer123 exclamation point. You know, like if that's your password, somebody can hack in and control your UAV to fertilize their crops and not yours, and waste your resources on their stuff. And so there, you know, and false position it so that way you think it's fertilizing your crops, but in fact it's over here on my farm. So
exactly.
there's that aspect of it. And the reason that would work is that the network out there is not as good as like it is in the city. You know, the positioning out in the rural areas is not that great. So basically, you know, there's also the equipment itself. So we've talked about the control systems, the UAVs, the Internet of Things, but there's also the equipment itself, right? So, you know, making sure that the physical security of these equipment is taken care of as well. So I'm thinking like a tractor, which has the appropriate security measures to keep somebody from getting into it, somebody that's not authorized to get into the tractor, or other pieces of farm equipment. You know, I'm not a farmer. I don't know what the pieces of equipment are, but you can imagine that these are the types of questions that need to be answered. And the fact that none of these things are being paid attention to is sort of why these are hackable farms. And I'm doing that in air quotes for anyone who's listening. You know, they also mentioned a couple other things here. There's a solar insecticidal lamps. So you can imagine if you had control of the voltage somewhere, you could turn those down so it wouldn't necessarily kill the bugs, right? That are potentially harming your crops. So there's a lot of unique challenges here that you have to consider. And then how does the human interact with all those things, right? So I think that's a pretty good survey of the problem space. Anything else to add there, Blake, before we like continue on to some of these applications of or problems within cybersecurity with human factors?
I just think you brought up some interesting points that might be worth kind of exploring a little bit. So one big kind of misconception I had is the amount of technology that's being used on a smart farm. I mean, we're talking about like UAVs doing specific tasking, like I would imagine for agriculture, or even, you know, spreading fertilizer, whatever it might be. But in terms of stuff, actually, we talked a little bit about last week, if you're thinking about supervisory control systems, in this is another one of those cases where we have to have a lot of automation in place, because without it, you're dealing with a lot of loss of signal and all sorts of stuff in terms of transmitting because of network issues, you know, the quality of the instruments, whatever it may be. But that actually leaves a kind of like entire set of like human factors issues, right? In that you have to be able to communicate to both to and from the operator in some case, who's like putting together at least initial automation for what the UAV needs to do. And then on top of that, you've got to actually be able to communicate back problems the UAV may be having through some piece of software and application, whatever it may be. but actually this lag time between communication that I as like a normal person, and I would imagine, I don't know anybody else, may not think about the fact that like lag in communication can actually be a really vulnerable time for something like a UAV or an automated system, in which you have the capability of a hacker being able to take it over and do something either malicious or hold it ransom or whatever it may be. And then we even have like different sensors that are attached to, parts of different parts of the farm. Like I know the article mentions about sensors that are for cows, so that like when they need to be fed, when anything else is going on with them based on like heat and temperature and that kind of stuff. So being able to hack those kind of sensors, that could affect not just livelihood, but it also could affect the health of another animal. So this just has like a lot of interesting and far-reaching implications here. And it's funny how it's related to cybersecurity, but it has so much more to do with just a lot of equipment being added to a context where it was much more manual labor. But to scale, we need a lot more automation in place.
Yeah, so I always struggle with human factors in cybersecurity because there's obviously the security aspects, there's privacy and security as it pertains to your data and who has access to that data and what they're doing with that data, and that's a big question that touches on human factors. A lot of that is driven by the frameworks by which you're using, and so this is a complex problem. So we'll try to break it down in terms of what is technology and what is human factors here. But there's that privacy and security aspect. There's the authentication aspect, the two-factor authentication. That's a whole process for people to do. If you're unaware what two-factor authentication is, it's where you log in with one device and then you verify that with another device that is paired with a login key from that first device. So in practice, this might be logging into a website and it says, hey, we've just texted you a code. Could you just give us that code to make sure that you're you and you're not somebody else from a remote location that doesn't have access to your phone? And two-factor authentication has been shown to be really effective in reducing the amount of unauthorized logins, right? So that's the authentication piece. That's the human factors piece. You might be able to apply that to something like the access control protocols, or like the controls to the UAV. You might be able to do something like that where you need that physical second device, a token authenticator, which is like kind of older school. It's like 2000s tech where you have this, this little device that you press it and it comes up with a little code that you put in and it's linked. And it's just a digital thing. It's not even connected to the internet. So that might be another way to do it. You have the other aspects of this where you have kind of these intrusion detection systems. That's a potential countermeasure to some of these threats in cybersecurity. Now, that I feel like the intrusion detection systems, that's kind of with two-factor authentication, but I feel like that is more technology. If a device senses that somebody's outside your system, and again, like Blake and I are not experts in cybersecurity, so we're just kind of breaking this down. If anyone is an expert in cybersecurity, please reach out to the show because we'd love to have a conversation about that. There's cryptography and key management. That's kind of the same thing with two-factor authentication. A lot of it comes down to verifying that the person accessing the system is, in fact, the person that needs to be accessing the system and not a threat elsewhere accessing that system.
Which can be really hard to do because, I mean, you've got to think about the context that we're working in now. So we're not so much limited to, you and I carry our phone all the time. Like I always have my phone when I'm at work because I have to two-factor authenticate various things that I access during the day. So it's not as big of a deal. But one big problem in kind of like the human factors space that I think a lot of people face is when we're introducing a lot more potential workload that can undermine how somebody's able to perform. And it's the same thing when we're talking about security too. So if we're implementing more technology that's supposed to be helpful, but there's a large gap in the understanding and kind of like mitigation strategies for something like cybersecurity, you have to kind of moderate that because you want to make sure that whatever solution you're providing is kind of like hitting both of the horns of the bull, right? So you want to be able to make sure that an operator, in this case a farmer, has a manageable farm that does it, and the technology added is not adding, in an adverse way to their workload. Because you got to think about these are people that are getting up, spending, 12-hour days managing a farm on top of new technology. So adding something like two-factor authentication to so many of these different smart farm systems, like you kind of have to think about like, okay, how do I do this in a way that makes it so it is secure and we can notify them of actual, cyber threats without making it too complex? So something like what you've suggested, Nick, about basically giving them almost a authenticator fob, like that feels like 2000s tech that may work really well in this environment where we're dealing with degraded networks or, different lags in terms of communication times between software systems. So it's a cool space to work in for sure, to think about some of the ways you can mitigate the smart farm problems for cybersecurity anyway.
Yeah. So I think we've done a good job of explaining what the problem space is. We've explained kind of how the human factors fits into it. I want to talk briefly about some like classic human factors cybersecurity problems, and we can apply it to this context, right? So with respect to this smart farms aspect, let's look at some classic human factors applications here. So first up, usability, accessibility. This is something that, when you think about usability patterns, there's a lot of things that are just baked into kind of the way that we use devices, right? Two-factor authentication, like we keep bringing that up, but it's almost baked into nearly everything that you have now. And so being able to sort of use those baked in options as a way to keep people from choosing less secure options, because it's designed to make them choose the more secure option from sort of one context to another. You can kind of think of that in terms of the usability and accessibility with respect to cybersecurity. So basically designing to make something by default more secure by implementing some of these design changes, right? So that's kind of one problem space.
I also think like a big thing with accessibility and usability when we're talking about like a cybersecurity issue, like definitely, yes, provide the capability to deal with that and make sure like you're giving people the correct technology to ensure this is the person that should be using it. But also I think it leads to a need to really focus on some of the what I always think of as like error trapping from Don Norman. So building in those security routines that can help the operator kind of not have to deal with all of the kind of potential issues that may run up, or if somebody is trying to do an attack on something like a UAV system. So building in those, I guess, mitigation routines into software to help improve overall usability for something like this.
Yeah, so I do want to talk about the usability and accessibility still with one more kind of point. And I guess the issue in cybersecurity is that the option for a more secure connection, a more secure system, typically interrupts a user's flow. And so the user-friendly option might not necessarily be the quickest. It might not necessarily be the most efficient, but it's the most secure. So if you think about a user's workflow going from, setting up my UAV control system, and it's like, hey, would you like to enable two-factor authentication? No, I don't need to. That will make me go to my phone, and my phone's in the other building. I left it there. Oops. I'm not going to do that. And then, so it's like, do you design it to where they have to? It still interrupts the flow, but it's going to be more secure. And it's that whole battle between how do you make it easy enough for somebody without disrupting their flow? So, keeping that in mind, if you are designing a cybersecurity system or just any system, design it with that interruption of flow in mind, right? Like save their options beforehand, allow them to leave. If anything goes wrong, they can pick back up from where they left off. Those types of considerations, right?
I think another thing there is to think about, are there other alternative solutions that are different than what you would typically do in that situation? Like, for instance, could we use voice instead of requiring them to have their phone? Something like that in this kind of specific case, if we're doing different types of authentication. But I think it does lend itself to finding unique solutions when like you don't want to interrupt workflow all the time.
Yeah. So the next kind of piece of the human factors aspect, and this is more of like a, I don't know, we'll talk about it. So this is imagine there are problems on a farm, right? There are problems that need solutions. So a product design team comes in, they design a solution. It's technology. It's a UAV instead of, your biplane. And they've designed it. It's a cool piece of technology, but was human factors considered? Was usability considered during the design process of this? Well, in most cases, yes, but was it considered with the context of a farm in mind? If you're using Internet of Things, there was probably security considered at some point. Was it considered for a farm? Probably not. So you need to consider that the solutions that you have to some of the problems that you're having on the farm may not be designed for your intended use, like a smart sprinkler system hooked up to a Internet of Things might not have that same level of cybersecurity that something else, like just manually turning on your sprinkler system would, right? You have to physically be in that space. You have to show your intent by flipping the valve to open up the sprinklers. I don't know how it's done. You turn the knob. I don't know. I'm not a farmer.
So the timer, turn it on. It's all good.
The whole solutions in search of a problem thing. Anything on that, Blake, before we move on to the next point?
I think that's a great one to consider here, because we're talking about like one of those times where we turn technology on and you can't turn it off. So because we didn't, or like I'm acting like I'm a farmer that put all this smart technology on my farm, but because like it hasn't been researched, and that's the entire point of this article and the subsequent research papers that have been written to kind of bolster the article. It's the importance of really understanding cybersecurity per context. And so just because like a technology advancement is great, which this definitely is, but because of the nature of kind of the world and the internet and people's access to information, it does leave you vulnerable in some places. So kind of stepping back and understanding that you have existing kind of solutions for different technology context. How do we apply what we learned previously, or how do we research what we're doing now effectively to create, more modern solutions for smart farming?
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes with this next point that we have here, that one size does not fit all. Like I was mentioning with the Internet of Things devices, it is kind of one of those ubiquitous, or trying to be ubiquitous, right? It's in almost every home, many homes. I want to say almost every, but yeah. Using it on a farm is a different context from using it in the home to control your lights or something. The cost of having somebody access my lights is I can't see. Oh no. But having it access something else like your sprinkler system that costs money to run water, or your your security system in your farm, which allows people entry to your buildings, that's a whole nother problem. And so it's not designed for every context. It's designed to be fairly generalized, and it needs to be designed for those specific contexts with the human in mind, or sort of the security aspect in mind. I think that let's see. I'm looking through here. There's a couple different strategies that you can employ to kind of get around some of these cybersecurity issues that often centers around security culture. We can go over those. I think they're fairly high level, but I think we've kind of done a good job of explaining the cybersecurity aspects of human factors. Anything else to add to that before we get into some of these solutions here, Blake?
One thing that I thought was kind of interesting that's not mentioned specifically in some of the things that we pulled, but I know it's a big human factors concern, is when you introduce, if you think about a smart farm, and even just some of the few things we've talked about, so sensors being attached to livestock and throughout your farm, or UAVs, any of that stuff, I just wonder what the impact to the operator is in terms of how has this changed life on a farm? And what does it really mean in terms of being a farmer now versus when you, 10 years ago without as much technology? So I think that's another kind of consideration as well. You may have people that become more interested in farming because of some of the tech aspects that are being introduced to it. And so that becomes another kind of interesting way that you can understand the impact of integration of technology like this. So somebody that is really interested in high tech and its impact on a farm or its impact on the globe in terms of feeding different populations and stuff like that. It's just a cool problem space for sure. And there's a lot of human factors implications, both on the design side, but also in the security aspects of it as well.
Yeah, so I guess to kind of cap this off here, let's just kind of go over some of these lessons learned in human factors cybersecurity as potential solutions. Right, this isn't going to be this is not going to fix every problem that smart farms have, but it's a good start that we can start looking at. So I'm just going to rattle these off high level. Blake, if there's anything that you think of, we can dig into them, but I'm just going to read them off first. So we have, consult your staff on security procedures, set clear boundaries for any sharing of information, be cognizant of what's going on in your physical environment, ensure that workloads of the user don't undermine the security. And we kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. Any employees on the farm need to be aware of the scale of the threat that is going to be a result of not following security procedures. So let them know that UAV could go fertilize somebody else's crops and that you won't get paid as much because our yield isn't as high. And then we have match security to personality types. This one's an interesting one. I want to dig into this one a little bit. And then ensure human factors are part of incident management analysis. So from the bottom level, make sure it's all involved. So Blake, any of those stick out to you? You want to talk about any of those?
I love the setting clear information sharing boundaries, because that's such a important thing that we have to deal with just in, I think, our day-to-day, even with applications that most people use like Facebook or anything like that. There's a lot of just cybersecurity things you want to know. You want to understand how information and data is being used. And this particular kind of solution is tough because there's two heads to the snake that I see. Because if you look in the article, like towards the end, they talk about AI potentially being a really great application space for smart farming, because maybe you can mitigate things like different styles of hacking attacks or virus nodes or whatever it might be. But the problem is there's not enough data that's focused on these types of technology being used in the context of farming. So coming up with a large enough data set that you can, apply deep learning principles to doesn't exist yet. So being willing from the farmer side and the tech side to be able to share that information across farms is a big deal. But at the same time, you probably want to be kind of protective of what you are sharing and what ends up stored in the cloud to always be used and always be referenced. Because it could be, I don't know what farming is like. I really have no idea how to be a farmer, but I could imagine maybe there's tricks of the trade that you don't necessarily want sitting on video footage, or maybe you figured out hey, if I use this UAV in a specific pattern, it really enhances the yield of my crops for this thing that I grow all the time. So it's stuff that's almost proprietary farming things that you've come up with based off of this technology. It's things you might want to keep private. So there's just a careful balance, like everything, I think, of how information is shared and used and who's benefiting from it in what ways.
Yeah, the last point that I want to jump on here is the one that I pointed out. So matching security to personality types. And I know that bullet kind of sounds confusing, and it can be if you're not familiar with some cybersecurity principles, right? Working with the DoD, they have us take a cybersecurity training, and it focuses a lot on things like insider threat. So when we're talking about personality types, we're talking about individuals that might be more vulnerable to those types of attacks, right? If you have somebody, an employee of the farm, that might give something away unknowingly that it's proprietary information, like you just said, Blake, or something else like unknowingly gave the password away that it's farmer123 exclamation point, those types of cybersecurity insider threats are important to understand. And so from a manager perspective, make sure that the right people have access to the right information. In the DoD, this is security clearances. make sure that people are well vetted before they get their security clearance to make sure that they are capable of handling that information. If information is mishandled, come down with a hammer appropriately and punish them in some way to take away their security clearance, make it so that they can't work on that type of material again in the future. That's what we're talking about with personality types here. Just making sure that organizations using understand these farms, understand who they're hiring and make that a part of their recruitment, right? So you're not just hiring somebody. You want to vet them and make sure that they're not from the farm down the way doing espionage on your farm for your proprietary methods to increase the competitor's yield. This whole problem space of smart farms is so fascinating, and I nerded out about this in office hours when I saw this, because I didn't even, like you, Blake, I didn't even think about farms being high tech. I think of farms as low tech, and it's not at all. And it's just insane to see where we're at in this problem space of cybersecurity and why it's so important.
Such a cool use of automation and potentially like deep learning, depending on how like we talked about, information is being shared. So yeah, this was a great one, and I'm really stoked that the Patreons pulled this one for this week.
Yeah, thank you to our patrons for selecting the topic, and thank you to our friends over at the IEEE Spectrum for our news story this week. If you want to follow along, we do post these articles as a blog post every week for your convenience, so you can go check it out on our website, and we do post those in our communities as well. Really quick, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to break down. We'll see what's going on in the human factors community right after this.
Human Factors Cast brings the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our weekly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and Human Factors Minute, a Patreon-only weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember, it depends.
Yes, and we are back. So yes, Patreon is a thing that we do. And we have, I guess, an exciting... no, it is an exciting announcement. Why am I guessing? It's a very, very exciting announcement. Really quick, I just want to thank you to our patrons, especially our honorary Human Factors Cast patron, Michelle Tripp. Patrons like you keep the show running, and thank you so much for your continued support. Speaking of keeping the show running, we do have an exciting thing. Now, look, we've tried to keep the show here ad-free, and we will. We are going to keep the show ad-free. Now, with that, there's a caveat. So we are now introducing 2 additional levels of Patreon support that you can help the show out. One is called I Just Really Like the Show. And this is just a way for you to give us more money. There's no additional benefits. It's just there if you want to give us some extra money. Then there's this other one, which has a tremendous benefit if you can think of how to use it correctly. So we do have a new tier called Show Sponsor. This is basically a way for you to control that commercial that you just heard. basically, you get 150 words for a script that we read here on the show every week. That you are, for every week and month that you are subscribed to the show, we will read it on the show for you. There can only be one of these people, so we will never have more than one show sponsor at a time. The value is there, I think, for us to keep the show running, expand to more platforms, do more interesting things, and it allows you to use our audience for whatever you'd like. Now, we have a more younger audience, early to mid-career professionals with some late career professionals in there as well. But if you want a very targeted message, like let's say you're a human factors only company that wants to hire a human factors individual, this might be a great place for you to write a script and have us say it every week that reaches a specific target of human factors demographic people. Again, we like keeping the show ad-free, so we made this, a competitive price tag with other things like ZipRecruiter. You might find a similar price point there. But again, this will help out the show. So I feel like this is a good compromise to us taking ads. It could be an ad, but really it's kind of up in the air as to what this person writes. It's just a way for somebody to support the show and influence what we put on it. That's what we're going with. We'll see if we have any takers, but it is a way for us to help the show grow. And ultimately, we needed to make that decision, and that's where we're at. Again, I don't want to consider this an advertisement. This is a patron. This is somebody who is helping contribute to the show, and it's just a way for them to get their message out. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and move on to this next part of the show. That's right. It came from. This week, it's going to be all Reddit. This is the part of the show where we search all over the internet to bring you topics the community is talking about. Any topic is fair game as long as it relates to the field of human factors, and Blake and I have an opinion on it. So what do we have? So up first this week, let's go ahead and take this first one. It's mentioning difficult clients during interviews. This one was written by Helvetica Forever on the User Experience subreddit. They go on to write, they say never badmouth an employer in an interview, but is it okay to acknowledge that you were dealing with a challenging external client on a project? Some projects are challenging simply because the client didn't know what they wanted and regularly changed expectations and requirements with no notice. If those conditions are phrased politely to contextualize a project, would it be considered a red flag from an employer's perspective? I wouldn't ever say, quote, well, the client was dumb and wanted a bunch of stupid, terrible stuff, end quote. But clearly discussing significant constraints is a big part of my story. Blake, would you ever badmouth a client in an interview?
Absolutely not. Because I mean that's bad manners. And so it's one of those things where you definitely don't want to do that. However, I will say that I have been asked, and I do ask, tell me about a difficult situation in which you had to navigate a tough client or a hard project, either that or like dealing with, your internal team having a hard time or dealing with a tough stakeholder. So it's something that I think people should be well versed in talking about. But like this is kind of hinting, you want to frame it right. You don't want to badmouth the client or kind of like talk a bunch of trash. You want to accentuate the fact that you were met with specific constraints. You figured out and pivoted in a way that matched the client's needs, matched hopefully your end user needs as well, and also helped your team adapt to a changing problem. Because it can be very difficult to work with, especially if you're kind of like in an agency or you're a freelancer. It can be difficult working with an external client. Things change. They want something different. Maybe your branding isn't right, whatever it may be. But how you talk about it is mainly the important part. But Nick, what do you think? I mean, would you ever badmouth a client to a new employer or a prospective employer?
Yes, but not specific names. I would mention, or projects. I would mention that, yes, I've worked with difficult clients in the past. They have demanded things, and explaining that relationship that you had with them to a potential employer is important, I feel. Because for a variety of reasons, there can be difficult clients on any project. Now, what you're getting from explaining that you've had a difficult client in the past is, I'm communicating to you, my prospective employer, that I know how to communicate to somebody in a professional manner and manage that. And I think that's incredibly valuable because if you don't know how to manage it, then you're not going to have great customer-client relations. You're going to have a bad reputation in your community. And so it's a matter of we can talk about approaching it as a separate issue someday. But for now, it's just, do you bring this up during interviews? Absolutely. Like I said, don't mention names, don't mention projects, but say, here's one example. I was working on a project and XYZ happened, and that was a very difficult challenge for me to overcome, and kind of frame it that way, right? So you're framing it as a challenge that you've overcame, and you're also explaining to a prospective employer what your process is for, overcoming some of those challenges. So I'm a yes on that.
There you go. Very good. Soft skill challenge number 1. There you are.
Perfect. All right. Next up, Human Factors Masters questions. This is from kybanz on the Human Factors subreddit. They write, "Hi, everyone. I was recently accepted into a Human Factors Masters program that will begin this fall. Due to my undergrad being in kinesiology and the majority of my experience being in healthcare, naturally, I am drawn to this sector of human factors. So my questions are," there's a list of them. So we're going to go over them one by one, but we'll tackle them all. 1, how does choosing a specific sector work? 2, are the curriculums of human factors programs typically broad enough to give the tools that you need for at least most of the major industries? 3, how easy is it to transition from industry sectors? 4, does anyone know about human factors in surgical robotics? 5, for example, 5, are there any couples in this subreddit that are both human factors engineers? So Blake, there's a lot of questions there. Let's tackle them one by one, and we'll kind of bounce back and forth so that way we get question, answer, question, answer. Let's do that way. So Blake, how does choosing a specific sector work?
That's a great question. So I'm going to give you my take on it, and it's kind of, what are you interested in? Where do you see that you would love to apply human factors work or human factors methods to a design problem, or just places that you are really interested in? Like if you are drawn to healthcare or things that have to do with kinesiology and you want to, pursue human factors in that field, awesome. There's nothing wrong with that at all. For me, I feel like it did me a lot of justice, kind of dabbling into a bunch of different things, from aviation to, enterprise software systems to other stuff. So I feel like it's just find somewhere you'd like to start and kind of keep growing in that domain as long as you feel like it's something that's for you.
Yeah, for me, sector selection or industry selection starts when you start looking at grad schools. For a lot of people, you should go towards an advisor who is in your sector of interest, who is aligned with you in terms of what they're working on, what you want to work on. And I think that will help form a great relationship for getting into that sector, because they have connections most of the time. They are up to date with a lot of the research that is going on in that sector. And so start back, where you can, or when you can, start as a student looking for grad schools. That's where you want to start. Now, if you are already an established human factors professional and you are looking for another sector, it all comes back to interest, right? What interests you? And then who do you know in that sector? Can you get a foot in the door somewhere? And then it's, how do you frame, and this is kind of answering another question down the line, but how do you frame your current work or work experience in a way to apply it to that new sector? So we'll get to that in a minute, but Blake, the next question here, are the curriculums of human factors programs typically broad enough to give the tools you need for at least the most part, or for at least the most of the major industries, in your experience?
In my experience, yes. I mean, my specific school, the methods class gave me so much, both like in classroom knowledge and applied experience, that I felt like, and I know at this point that I had enough of a baseline understanding of how to apply human factors in a different type of setting, no matter if it was aviation or the DoD or working in a small startup. The biggest thing, the caveat there is it's a baseline, and you will always continue to have to learn like the nuances in different industries. You'll kind of encounter that probably in your job interviews or anything like that. Like for instance, healthcare, you'll want to look up specific human factors guidelines related to healthcare, which may not be anything but breezed over in a school program. But at least you should have a nice baseline to start with, so you can kind of expand out and learn what you need to.
Yeah, I agree. I think most programs offer that great baseline. And it's going to be, like Blake said, you will often find that you need to learn new skills once you get into the workforce. There are ways that certain employers do things that you have to adjust to, course correct, learn new methods. Every different program is different. And so there's kind of commonality between them all, but they'll teach you different things, and you'll learn things from people along the way. And that's part of your job, is to never stop improving. You always want to be consistently learning how to best tackle a situation. And the more things that you have in your toolbox that you can approach that situation from, the better. So yes, but you'll also obviously learn more as time goes on. Next question. Let's see here. How easy is it to transition between industry sectors? So Blake, I was kind of getting at this one earlier, but what do you think? How easy is it to transition?
It depends. The biggest thing that I have here is anybody that's listened to the show, you've heard me talk about this and harp on it before. If you've worked with me ever in the past and have like questions about this kind of stuff, I feel like networking can really help you here. Doing it early on. And in the cases where you're finding it difficult to transition between different sectors, a big way to get after it is to kind of carve your own way to figure out, how do I get into another sector? How do I get experience there? So trying to make sure that you're networking early on, that you're volunteering for, an HFES chapter, whether you're in school or you're like an adult in working life, or same thing with UX stuff. Getting really involved in the community can help you make those connections. And by making those connections, you can have a foot in the door somewhere, or maybe somebody can introduce you to somebody else. But it can be difficult, not impossible though.
I agree. I think knowing somebody in the sector that you want to go in is a huge benefit to you. The other way you can do it is just apply for jobs in that sector without really having the experience, and tailoring your experience to that new sector. Obviously, if you're trying to break into a new thing, you will need to do your own research as to what are the most common tools, methodologies, those types of things employed. And so the more you can pull from your current experience, the higher likelihood is that you will be able to mesh with that new industry sector. If you're going from something completely different to something, or if you're going from something to something completely different, it might be harder to paint that story without a connection bridging the two. And so, yes, it does come down to people that you know, but you can also frame your experience in a way that helps you try to break into that. So that's what I have for that one. I'm going to skip this next one. We'll just go to the last one here. Are there any couples that are both human factors engineers? Blake?
Yes. And we do completely different things, which is hilarious to me. But yeah, so we do both. Elise Hallett, who's one of the best human factors engineers I've ever met. She does much more of like a traditional human factors role on top of being in a very high level leadership role. So think of it like a PM on steroids that can do a lot of awesome human factors work. Whereas I find myself in much more of a design related role. So we do contrastingly different things and have different interests both in the field and in life. But it is kind of interesting there. One thing I did want to jump in on, Nick, is something to consider if you are interested in surgical robotics in HF is checking out the human factors or the healthcare symposium footage you guys did. But there's also a lot of great companies like Intuitive who have awesome human factors practitioners on their staff that would be more than happy to talk to you about that kind of stuff. So definitely look out for those companies.
Yeah, I was going to leave with that plug there. Elise, who was on the show for the whole Human Factors Healthcare Symposium stuff, there's a lot of interesting content there that might be helpful if you're looking for that healthcare application domain area. Blake, I'm going to skip this next one. We'll just get into it next week. But it's time for one more thing. Blake, what's your one more thing?
Man, so one thing that's come up a bunch when I'm talking with students who are kind of tired of not having a targeted audience to pull from is how do I recruit participants for my usability tests? And this came from a newsletter from Design Lab. Full disclosure, it comes from a company that I do work for. But it also the article is really focused on a specific platform. But I think there's some good takeaways from this article as well. Something that I have often found really hard to do is finding recruitment participants. Like, where do you start? What do you even do? And I think one kind of like some of the suggestions they have here is if you're working at a company that has like an established product, one really good thing to do is use your actual customer base. Because I know that sounds intuitive and simple, but a lot of times people will go outside of the customer base because they're worried about their experience or learning effects. But they have a lot of input that they can give you into a current product. Another place is to use something like another platform, like a Maze or like a usabilitytesting.com to just kind of outsource some of that problem area for you just to get your prototype out there or get your software idea out there so that you can get it tested. The last thing, and this is my favorite one, go check out places like Slack or Discord or Reddit, like the user experience subreddit or the human factors subreddit that we use all the time. These are great places where you can do things like meet people, connect, test your ideas, but also, maybe even find work. I found one of my first user experience design job was through a Reddit post. So going and using those communities effectively can really help you, in this case, find test participants for your software. But it can also be a great way to meet people.
Okay, my one more thing. It's incredible, Blake, that you've given the community that resource because mine's just going to be BSing about taking a trip. So thank you, Blake. My one more thing. We were talking about this before the show. How long has it been since you've taken a trip outside of California?
Oh, man. So I think we figured it out. It has to be at least 2 years for me anyway.
Yeah, it's about 2 years for myself as well, because before my son was born, I was around for a while and we didn't go to Human Factors and Ergonomic Society 2019 because of that. And before that, my last trip was outside for work. And this is the first time because of COVID, obviously, that I've tried to plan a trip. And man, I just gotta hand it to Tripp. It's a great tool where you can kind of plan your itinerary. And obviously right now things are weird because we're kind of in that almost everything's okay, but not quite. And in fact, the place that we're going has just kind of shut down a lot of things. And so it's like we have to plan around where we're going and what's open and what kinds of activities we can do in that area. And so it's just been an amazing experience to kind of get back into the planning itinerary type of thing and looking for activities to do. But anyway, TrippIt is a wonderful tool. If you haven't used it, I'll link it in the description below. But it is it's basically, it links together everything and you can kind of see what your next step is for the trip. It's so cool. And you just forward it emails and it automatically, like any lodging, any transportation, you just forward it and it imports it all and does it all for you. It's great.
So there's this inside joke between me and Elise. I hate TrippIt.
Oh, do you?
And she absolutely loves it. She uses it for everything. Her parents love it. It's great. And it's a great software system and a great software solution. The reason that I hate it is something happened. I don't know when, but there's some reason that I actually get Elise's trips in addition to mine. And I'll always have in my TrippIt random stuff that I'm like, I'm not doing any of that. So it's just a funny kind of silly inside joke there.
That's funny. Well, thank you for sharing that, Blake.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's going to be it for today, everyone. Let us know what you guys think of the news story this week. What do you think about smart farms? I think I'm totally mind blown over here. You can hang out with us on our Slack or Discord or get to us on any of our social channels. Let us know what you guys think. Visit our official website. Sign up for our newsletter if you want to stay up to date with all the latest Human Factors news. If you like what you hear, you want to support the show, there's a couple ways you can do that. 1, leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast medium you are listening to right now. 2, you can tell your friends about us. That helps the show grow. Or 3, if you have the financial means and want to support us that way, you can consider supporting us on Patreon. Of course, we do give back to our patrons. And as always, links to all of our socials and website can be found in the description of this episode. I want to thank Mr. Blake Arnsdorff for being on the show today. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk about hacking into a UAV on a smart farm?
If you want to talk about smart farms, you can always find me in the Human Factors Cast Discord, and you can also find me all over social media at Don't Panic UX.
As for me, I've been your host, Nick Roome. You can find me streaming on Twitch Tuesdays at 11 Pacific a.m. For office hours or across social media at Nick_Roome. Thanks again for tuning in to Human Factors Cast. Until next time, it depends. All right, if you're with us on stream, stick with us. We're going to do a post show. Blake, you got a jet. I'm going to do the post show solo. Solo, you can't hear me, hopefully.
Excellent. And just to be clear, this is 204, yes?
This is 204.
Oh, right. 204. All right.
Oh, shoot. You know what we never did in the pre-show is your blog post.
We did not.
You want to take...
Want to just do it now?
Yeah, you want to take a look at that real quick? I can pull it up.
Let's do it. I got to export this thing and send it to you anyway. So
yeah, okay. I'll log in. We can do that real quick. Let me just do that guy and that guy. Oop.
Just as another shout out, in case you were listening to the show and you're still hanging around, I cannot recommend enough checking out. Even if you're not remotely interested in robotic surgery or working in it, checking out the Da Vinci system from Intuitive is insane. And this is some of the stuff that like Elise did a little bit of her undergrad work on. I don't know. It's an interesting human factor space where you have to think about, virtual reality and a robotic machine operating on somebody on a table. It's mind blowing. It's about as crazy as a smart farm.
I think we talked about Da Vinci on the show. It was one of the healthcare symposium.
I'm sure
recaps.
We did. Yeah. Because we've had Ken Catchpole on here too, and he did a lot of work with Intuitive, I think, at some point. But anyway, yeah, lots of great folks over there too. Some people from, I think, school that I went to. But anyhow, cool stuff. All right, sir, you were doing something for the pod page, right?
Yeah, I am getting this thing up, and it's my computer's chugging, so forgive me for that, but we will get this almost there, Blake. I'm almost there. I know you got to run.
Take your time. You're good.
We will do this very quickly. So let me go ahead and pull this up. So if you're on with us, this is our blog. We are going to do a recap here of let's see this picture in picture. So Blake, this is a monthly advice roundup. So basically, let me know if there's any changes that you'd like to make, since this is in your voice. But the way I've kind of laid this out is, here's the episode that it aired in. Here's the link, and here's an embed of the video. And that's awesome. Kind of it. And we only have the 6, right? So this one, we didn't actually get produced this week because of some production issues. And so basically the gist of this is, in addition to our, would you start it with, hey, everyone? Do you want to say something different?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
It's probably what I would naturally say is not professional. So let's not do that. So we are trying something different. I feel like
humanfactors.
Yeah, there you go. Actually, do you want me to read it and see if it sounds natural coming out of my mouth?
Yeah, do it.
That's the only way I can tell. So we are trying something different by posting a roundup of advice we have given throughout the month. All right. We have started a YouTube series that breaks down each question answered during the It Came From segment on our weekly podcast. Excellent. Shameless plug. Yeah. Feel free to... Yeah, sweet. Sounds pretty good.
Join us on Twitch for our pre-show. And then the last little blurb here, if you're not already, this is kind of standard. So,
yeah.
So the only other thing we need to do is make a thumbnail for this with like some of the key questions that are asked here. I think we'll probably do this one and maybe like some of these other snippets or whatever.
Sweet.
But I'll do that later. So I think we're good for now. I will do that later on my own time. And you are free to go, sir.
All right, man. I'm gonna grab this thing, send it to you, and you should have it in your inbox shortly.
Great. Thank you so much, Blake.
All right. Everybody else, thanks for hanging out. And Nick, thank you for taking over. And I will see everybody next week. Nick will be off, and I'll be doing this.
Yeah, I might be able to make the pre-show, so don't get too comfortable there, Blake.
Sweet. All right. Later, guys.
Bye, Blake. All right, everyone. So we are here with the post show. We are doing the post-production of the show, which usually entails something like a thumbnail for the episode, the show notes, all that stuff. So I feel like this is probably going to not be as long as a normal post show just because Blake is gone. And I don't really have anybody to bounce ideas off. So stick with me. If you have questions, throw them in the chat. My microphone just went dead. There it goes. If you have questions, throw them in the chat. I'm happy to answer those while I am doing this stuff. We're bringing processing here. So we are focusing on two things. We're going to look at the podcast artwork, the little 1:1 aspect ratio that you see in the podcast feed. And then we're also going to look at the YouTube thumbnail. We're going to do that. So yeah, there it is. Podcast artwork aspect ratio 1:1. And I guess we got to pull this one up to something we're looking for today is images of smart farms, or we can just look up royalty-free farm images and we'll see what that gives us. But for now, let's see. This is loading. I'm going to have to apologize in advance because of my slow machine. If you're joining us now, I wanted to restart my machine before we started, but it would have kicked Blake out. And if I restart now, it's just going to shut down. So we'll just stick with it. It's going to be a little slow. That's okay. So I'm doing a quick Google search for farm technology images in another browser. Now, let's take this and we'll duplicate it. We'll see what's going on there. And then we'll come over here and do the same thing on the YouTube thumbnail. Just another quick plug for some of our blog posts out there. We do a recap of the news every week. And tomorrow we will be posting a monthly recap of everything that we have talked about over the, or not we've talked about, but everything we found over the last month. So it'll be an interesting way to keep going. That tomorrow. For now, let's see, where are we are trying to connect. See, everything's chugging. This is painful. Promise this won't happen next week, guys. Wink, wink, because I'm not going to be here. Yeah, I'm going on a little trip with my family and a family friend. We are checking out a new location for potentially residents. So that's a fun time, I think, or it should be anyway. Hoping so. Wow, I am really sorry about all this slowness here. I don't know why this is like chugging so bad. I literally just, oh, you know what? Hang on. Maybe I need to, we'll close out of this and maybe that will help with some of the chugginess. Maybe, I don't know. I can't see why that would be so chuggy, but we'll see. All right. Coming down to here. So this is the latest. A little, last week's episode was a ton of fun. If you haven't checked that out, check that out. Oh, yes, it was the Mars helicopter, which I think now has successfully done, like 3 flights or something. So that's exciting. It's exciting to see. We talked about last week how you test it, it gets data that better informs how testing bursting or flying in. And so you keep doing that loop until you get more and more comfortable in that environment. And of course, at a certain point, you can just fly around, presumably without incident. So if you're on here with me, you're watching me struggle, trying to get my network to work and watch me struggle against my computer, extra things that I can push out in the meantime. Yes, it looks like my stream is having connection issues. Thank you very much, Restream. Yeah, smart farms. That was a ton of fun to talk about tonight. I was super jazzed about that when we saw the news story come through. If you haven't already, check out office hours. I do them Tuesday at 11 Pacific, 11 a.m. It's usually a great time. Some weeks are better than others, but most of the time we'll find some fun, interesting, exciting things to talk about and ramble on the show. And it's kind of fun to see the selection criteria for those. Okay, I don't know. Geez, yeah, I don't know, guys. Google Docs is struggling because I have yeah, I have. Let's see here, some images over here. I have images up on another tab here, but this Google Docs is really just messing with me. Creative Commons. What speaks of high-tech farms? I think of drones, or license able. What the rules are, commercial and other licenses. There used to be like a free option. Maybe like free stock photos or something. I don't know. We'll look. We'll see. In the meantime, this is not very exciting to look at. Neither is my face, but let's see. Free stock photos. Pexels. That's one of the sites that we use our to find other farm. We'll put in farm. We'll see what comes up. And we'll look at like anything that has technology. Farm tech, maybe farm tech. Again, I know it's not very exciting for everyone watching because they don't have yeah, there we go. I think that might be it. We'll see. I guess I can crop it. Oh, wow. Let's do that one. Yeah, I like this. We'll paste this in here just so everyone can see what I'm looking at. That's why don't I do that? There you go. Look at that. See? Look at that. Look at that drone over that farm. Isn't that cool? Anyway, that's going to be the image. There's little post-production being done on this. But anyway, I'm going to jump off. Thank you, everyone, so much for tuning in to the pre-show, the show, the post-show, anything that we've done tonight. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. I'm going to be gone next week and the week after. It's weird because we've started the trip on Thursdays, so I could get out of podcasting for 2 weeks or something. I don't know. But I will be around, I think, on the pre-show next week. I'll be sitting in a vehicle or in a friend's house or something. We'll figure it out. Anyway, thank you everyone, and thanks for joining us. And I think Blake's going to do his office hours on Sunday, so join us then. Otherwise, I'll be around on Tuesday. I'll still be here picking out the news stories. And yeah, thank you everyone. Bye bye.